Chapter 131. The light yellow jade slip was like amber. Chu Xiu held the jade slip and probed it with his mental strength. A large amount of information surged into his mind, causing Chu Xiu to let out a muffled groan. Fortunately, Chu Xiu did not immediately use the cultivation transmission jade slip when he received it. The information in the cultivation transmission jade slip was truly astonishing. The amount of information was more than 10 times more than the 3 blades of Avicii. One could imagine how complicated this cultivation technique was. After a while, Chu Xiu finally looked through the contents of the technique in detail. However, his expression was a little strange. Old man Huang was right. The technique in the jade slip was indeed a Buddhist technique. More accurately, it was a technique of the Tantric sect, a branch of Buddhism, fast and slow 9 words formula. Buddhism had been passed down since ancient times. There were countless branches, and the most powerful was naturally the Zen sect. The Subodhi monastery had always cultivated the Zen sect techniques. The Dharma and martial arts of the Great Light Temple were mainly based on the Zen sect, but there were also some tantric techniques mixed in. And now, the fast and slow 9 words formula that Chu Xiu had obtained was the most authentic tantric technique. The fast and slow 9 words formula cultivated the mental strength internally and the physical body externally. It advocated the eternal instant of the unity of heaven and man. Its tyrannical power was different from the martial arts of the Central Plains. As the name suggested, the 9 words formula was divided into 9 words. They were Lin, Bing, Do, Zhe, Array, Front. Although the 9 words formula was called fast or slow, it actually had 9 different kinds of strange and bizarre changes. It could only be fully unleashed with a strong inner force. Without rest, it could unleash the powerful seal art of the Tantric Buddhism sect to its peak. The 9 words formula's seal evolution were Lind Dugu seal, focused on stability, impregnable. Bing Great Vajra seal, main force, indestructible. Do External Lion seal, main force, clang of thunder. Zhe Inner Lion seal, main force, invincible. Alt External Binding seal, main force, seek luck and avoid calamity. Array Inner Binding seal, main force, let me move freely. Lai Wisdom Fist seal, main force, heaven and earth are useless. In the Sun Will seal, it mainly controlled the 5 elements and restrained the baleful aura. First, the Perfect Aquarius seal. The main light was to repel evil. After carefully reading through the 9 words formula, Chu Xiu heaved a sigh of relief. He finally understood why there was so much information in this technique imparting jade slip. Each of the fast and slow 9 words formulas could be used as an individual cultivation technique. With the 9 words combined into one, the amount of information was naturally immense. Moreover, this fast and slow 9 words formula could be said to be a rather perfect martial art. Within the 9 words formula, there were internal and external, offensive and defensive, mental pressure, and sensory changes. It could be said that just this cultivation technique alone could push Chu Xiu's close combat cultivation to a whole new level. Chu Xiu had not wasted so much effort to destroy the Zhang family, snatch the technique imparting jade slip, and find someone to repair it. This cultivation technique did not appear in the original plot. It was probably because Chu Xiu had not interfered in his previous life. The Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery and the Zhang family of Mount Tai Commandery did not merge smoothly. Perhaps they perished together, or outsiders intervened. In any case, this fast and slow 9 words formula jade slip had not been repaired by anyone. From the current Chu Xiu's perspective, this fast and slow 9 words formula's level was definitely not low. At the very least, it had to be between the 7th and 8th transformations. Its cultivation requirements were also very harsh. The fast and slow 9 words formula focused on internal and external cultivation. It was also very demanding on one's own body. Without enough inner energy, it was impossible to activate the seals. With Chu Xiu's current cultivation of the inner aura realm, he could barely reach the standard of cultivating this fast and slow 9-words formula. If Chu Xiu had obtained this cultivation technique when he was still at the innate realm, he could only stare at it helplessly. He would not be able to cultivate it. If he were to forcefully cultivate it, he would probably go berserk. Putting down the fast and slow 9-words formula, Chu Xiu prepared to first refine the blood jade exquisite. The blood jade exquisite contained the essence of qi and blood of tens of thousands of warriors collected by the Blood River sect. It was extremely powerful. Not only could it transform one's gang qi into the powerful and evil blood-refined god's gang qi, it could also strengthen one's qi and blood, raising the strength of one's physical body to a whole new level. And for an inner aura realm warrior like Chu Xiu, the power of the blood jade exquisite could also push his realm to another level, allowing Chu Xiu to reach the physical invulnerability realm. From the inner aura realm to the physical invulnerability realm, the power of the blood jade exquisite could also push his realm to another level, allowing Chu Xiu to reach the physical invulnerability realm. In the past, Chu Xiu only dripped water into the bucket 1 drop at a time. But now, as long as he could refine the blood jade exquisite, it was equivalent to holding a bigger bucket and pouring water into it. Chu Xiu was almost 100% sure that he could use the power of the blood jade exquisite to step into the physical invulnerability realm. Holding the blood jade exquisite, Chu Xiu's inner force entered it. In an instant, a turbulent qi and blood surged into Chu Xiu's body. In an instant, Chu Xiu's face became extremely red. Even his whole body was surging with qi and blood, and his body seemed to have expanded by 1 size. Ordinary people would definitely need to take steps to refine the blood jade exquisite. Doing it like Chu Xiu was purely courting death. But Chu Xiu naturally had the confidence to do so, because he had the glazed gold thread goo in his body. The moment the blood jade exquisite's powerful qi and blood entered Chu Xiu's body, the glazed gold thread goo sensed this power. It immediately released countless golden threads and swallowed the powerful qi and blood into its body. Then, it transformed it into its own gentle power and returned it to Chu Xiu. The Heaven Sin branch leader thought that Chu Xiu would need 2 months or more to refine the blood jade exquisite. But in fact, Chu Xiu used even less time than them. The Heaven Sin branch leader and the others needed a month to refine the blood jade exquisite. But now, for Chu Xiu, half a month was enough. Half a month later, the blood jade exquisite's power was completely refined, and the blood jade exquisite in his hand also turned into powder. A powerful force rushed into Chu Xiu's dantian and meridians. At this moment, the power in Chu Xiu's body suddenly erupted, like a flood that was stopped by a dam. It suddenly burst out, and the extremely sharp aura even caused the cave that Chu Xiu was in to tremble. Chu Xiu used his palm as a knife and chopped out with a loud bang. The scarlet aura that shone with endless blood fiendish and cold aura fell down. It was more than 7 feet long and directly cut into the surrounding stone walls. In an instant, a huge cut appeared, as if it was cutting tofu. Physical invulnerability realm, completed. At this moment, Chu Xiu had stepped into the physical invulnerability realm. If other martial artists of the same level were to see this, their jaws would definitely drop. The difference between the internal and external invulnerability realms was the greatest for martial artists of the same level. This was especially true for the physical invulnerability realm. Some people could only release their aura a few inches, and they couldn't even release it out of their body. But some martial artists could release their aura a few feet out, and it was normal for them to release their aura. However, those who could release their aura a few feet out were martial artists who had reached the peak of the physical invulnerability realm. Their own accumulation was already extremely deep. And when they had just entered the physical invulnerability realm, most martial artists' aura was actually measured in inches. To be able to reach 1 foot was already considered extremely talented. Chu Xiu had just broken through to the physical invulnerability realm, and his aura could already reach 7 feet. From this point, it could be seen how deep and abnormal Chu Xiu's accumulation was. Most importantly, Chu Xiu's current aura had his own powerful attribute, the blood-refined divine aura. There were also different types of aura. Most martial artists only used ordinary aura, which evolved from their own inner strength, and didn't carry any other power. Higher-grade aura could carry the changes of one's own martial arts method. The aura would carry the same kind of power according to the attribute of the martial arts method you cultivated. And the true extreme aura was the evolution of one's own martial arts method and martial arts' true meaning. For example, the pure yang aura of the Chunyang Dao sect of the Three Clear Daoist sect was known as the punisher of evil and suppressing demons. It could strangle all evil beings in the world. There was also the White Tiger killing divine aura of the White Tiger Hall of the Four Divine Abilities. It contained the power of the Western White Tiger Eugene, and it was also infused with killing intent and evil aura. It was incomparably sharp and had an evil aura. This level of aura contained martial arts' true meaning and was a famous existence in the underworld. And the blood-refined divine aura that Chu Xiu cultivated now was also an existence of the same level as the pure yang aura or the White Tiger killing divine aura. It was also famous in ancient times. However, following the demise of the Blood River sect, the martial arts methods of the Blood River sect were no longer complete. Naturally, the cultivation method of the blood-refined divine aura was also lost. Now that Chu Xiu had cultivated the blood-refined divine aura with the help of the blood jade crystal, he could be said to be a unique existence in the underworld. Unless someone could obtain another blood jade crystal. However, a treasure like the blood jade crystal was also a treasure of the same level in the Blood River sect in the past. The appearance of one was already considered a stroke of luck. The chances of another appearing could be said to be very low. After stepping into the physical invulnerability stage, Chu Xiu wasn't in a hurry to come out. He cultivated in the cave for another half a month to stabilize his realm. At the same time, he practiced the fast and slow 9 words formula again before walking out of the cave. However, on the second day after Chu Xiu left the cave, he felt that something was wrong. Someone was searching the mountain. The dense forest of Shangmang Mountain was so big. Although there were caravans coming and going, they took a fixed path. However, the traces left behind on Shangmang Mountain indicated that someone was searching the mountain along a fixed path. Moreover, the person who came was very strong. Chu Xiu couldn't be sure if these people were looking for him. However, since he had left the cave, he had left behind a trace. In this barren mountain where there were no traces all year round, even the slightest trace was very obvious. Even if he went back to cover up the trace now, it would be too late. A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. He didn't escape along the other side of the trace. Instead, he followed the trace. He wanted to see who exactly was searching the mountain. After nightfall, Chu Xiu followed the trace and jumped between the branches of the dense forest. Finally, he caught up with the people in front of him. There were 5 people in front of him. 1 physical invulnerability stage, 1 inner invulnerability stage, and 3 inborn stage. Seeing these 3 people, Chu Xiu's eyes turned cold. Needless to say, these 5 people were from the drifting snow city of the far north. Chapter 132. Previously, Chu Xiu did not expect that the northern floating snow city and the moored village would send people to hunt him down. Shangmang Mountain was so huge, and the people from these 2 sects would not even make a splash. How could they find him? It would just be a waste of effort. However, looking at it now, the other party seemed to have locked on to his approximate location and were searching for him in a certain area. Moreover, the arrangement of these 5 people was also planned by them. Chu Xiu had the ability to kill a physical invulnerability realm martial artist. Therefore, among the 5 people, there must be at least 1 physical invulnerability realm martial artist. Otherwise, they would be killed by Chu Xiu in a second. And an inner invulnerability realm martial artist played a supporting role. Even if Chu Xiu could kill a physical invulnerability realm martial artist, an inner invulnerability realm martial artist also had the ability to injure Chu Xiu. As for the three inborn realm martial artists, their role was to expand the search area. If they encountered an existence like Chu Xiu, it was basically a dead end. Chu Xiu retracted his aura and observed, but at this moment, he suddenly heard an abnormally soft sound of something piercing through the air. Chu Xiu's figure moved, and he directly jumped to the ground. The tree he was hiding in had been directly smashed to pieces by a short spear infused with astral energy. This explosion was extremely loud in the night sky. The 5 people who were being followed by Chu Xiu were instantly shocked. They immediately turned around and saw Chu Xiu on the ground. The 5 people were all stunned. They were still looking for Chu Xiu. They did not expect that he had been following them all this time. Thinking of Chu Xiu's terrifying strength, among the 5 people, except for the physical invulnerability realm martial artist, the other 4 felt a lingering fear. With Chu Xiu's strength, if he wanted to launch a sneak attack, none of them would be able to survive. Behind them, a physical invulnerability realm martial artist strode over and sneered, "You people from the drifting snow city of the far north are really trash. You didn't even notice after being followed for so long." The physical invulnerability realm martial artist who ambushed Chu Xiu from behind was from the Morgue village. He was dressed very strangely. He wore a black rattan armor and carried 4 short spears on his back. He also carried a black long spear in his hand. Moreover, from the looks of it, he was also very proficient in Qigong. At the very least, before he made his move, Chu Xiu did not notice him. This martial artist from the Morgue Manor had been following Chu Xiu's trail, but he was afraid of alerting the enemy, so he did not bring anyone else. He only relied on his Qigong to chase after Chu Xiu, looking for opportunities to attack Chu Xiu. It was a pity that Chu Xiu's reaction was too amazing. His trump card, the handgun, was actually dodged just like that. The martial artist from the drifting snow city of the far north snorted coldly, "Don't make sarcastic remarks. Once we catch him, we will split the credit equally." As soon as he finished speaking, the physical invulnerability realm martial artist from the far north directly rushed towards Chu Xiu. Although Chu Xiu had a record of killing a physical invulnerability realm martial artist, that battle was also very dangerous. It could be said that he had barely won. Although they were all in the physical invulnerability realm, their strength was slightly weaker than Zen Master Heng Shan, who had been killed by Chu Xiu in the past. However, the difference was not too great. With 2 against 1, how could they not be able to kill Chu Xiu? With such a mentality, the drifting snow city of the far north's palm fell. An icy blue gang chi with a dense chill exploded along with the palm force. He actually held back 20% of his strength. The Heavenly Sin branch leader had said that it did not matter if Chu Xiu was dead or alive. But for the Morgue Manor and the drifting snow city of the far north, it was best to capture him alive. If they could capture him alive, they could even pry out many good things from his mouth. However, the next moment, the drifting snow city martial artist knew that he was wrong. He was gravely mistaken. Facing this palm, Chu Xiu's hands formed a very strange seal. His hands were like wheels, and he poured his inner force into them. A resplendent golden light suddenly burst forth. Army Formula, Great Vajra-Will Seal. The main force of the Great Vajra-Will Seal was condensed like an all-indestructible. As this seal descended, it was as if the guardian deity had subdued all demons and suppressed the heavens. Boundless explosive power was hidden within this seal, and as soon as this seal appeared, the eyes of the martial artist from the Drifts Now city of the far north flashed with endless terror. He wanted to retreat, but it was already too late. With a loud bang, his entire arm was smashed into minced meat by Chu Xiu's Great Vajra-Will Seal. Moreover, the seal did not stop at all. It directly blasted a huge hole in his opponent's chest. As a mist of blood scattered, the drifting Snow City martial artist's body was like a rag doll, directly flying back more than 30 meters. Instant kill. Although the drifting Snow City martial artist had not expected Chu Xiu's strength and wanted to capture him alive, he had held back 20% of his strength. But the result was that he had been instantly killed by Chu Xiu. This also showed how great Chu Xiu's current strength was, and how tyrannical the 9 words formula of fast and slow was. The drifting Snow City martial artist, who was about to rush up from behind, was already stunned. The intelligence clearly stated that Chu Xiu was at the inner invulnerability realm. How did he become a physical invulnerability expert in less than a month? And how was his strength so terrifying? Although he was very puzzled, it was clearly not the time for him to be puzzled. The physical invulnerability realm martial artist relied on his outstanding qigong to directly turn around and flee. Chu Xiu's expression did not change. He used the formation formula and formed the inner binding seal with both hands. In an instant, Chu Xiu's entire body's genuine qi was channeled into his legs under the guidance of the inner binding seal. With a move of his feet, his figure instantly appeared in front of the drifting Snow City martial artist, as swift as thunder and as fast as lightning. This was the inner binding seal. As long as the seal was not broken, one could explode with extreme speed and move unhindered between heaven and earth. Perhaps the only shortcoming of this seal was that the explosive speed was too fast, causing the internal energy to be consumed like flowing water. It could only be used in short-range battles, but it was impossible to use it for long-range raids. The drifting Snow City martial artist was startled by the sudden appearance of Chu Xiu. Although his qigong was not very brilliant, it was enough to show off among the martial artists of the same level. But now, he was instantly caught up by Chu Xiu. However, the information on Chu Xiu did not show that he knew qigong. If he did not know that the drifting Snow City would not harm him, he would have thought that Meng Yuanlong had given them fake information to send them to their deaths. The realm and strength that Chu Xiu had displayed simply didn't match up with the information he had received. A trace of cold killing intent flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. The red sleeve saber in his hand suddenly slashed out. In the night, the cold and evil blood refined divine shield flashed with scarlet light, looking even more strange. The drifting Snow City martial artist gritted his teeth. His gang qi erupted from his body and he swung the long spear in his hand. In an instant, dozens of spear radiance burst out and blocked in front of him. However, under the blood-refined divine shield, not only his gang qi, but even the fourth revolution precious spear in his hand was directly cut off by Chu Xiu's saber. When the blood-refined divine shield entered his body, the cold killing intent and blood qi immediately caused the drifting Snow City martial artist to spit out a mouthful of blood. Before he could react, he was greeted by the violent saber momentum that was like a continuous drizzle. Dusk drizzle, soul-beckoning red sleeve. Under the bombardment of the overwhelming saber momentum and the blood-refined divine shield, the drifting Snow City martial artist from the drifting Snow City only lasted for more than 10 moves before his soul was cut off and his body was separated from his body. Chu Xiu looked in the direction where the other martial artists had fled, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. The power of the internal binding seal burst out, and he directly caught up with a Xiantian realm martial artist at the fastest speed. He used the great art of extinguishing heaven and earth, extinguishing soul shifting to force out some information. When he learned that the 3 sects had jointly spent a lot of money to hire the divination masters of the wind-sweeping building to deduce his approximate location, Chu Xiu also felt a little helpless. This method was simply impossible to guard against. Of course, it was easy to defend against it. When one's strength reached a certain level, those divination masters would not dare to easily deduce the information about one's location. Otherwise, before the information was divined, the backlash of the heavenly secrets would seriously injure them or even kill them. Therefore, whether it was the amateur divination masters of the wind-sweeping building or the experts of the Tao of Tao who were proficient in the heavenly secrets calculation Tao, they would not easily deduce someone. They would only do something. This time, the three sects had jointly spent a lot of money to hire the divination masters of the wind-sweeping building. Obviously, they were prepared to take back the blood jade, exquisite jade, before Chu Xiu refined it. This way, their money would not be wasted. However, this time, they were obviously going to suffer a loss. This was because Chu Xiu had already refined the blood jade, exquisite jade. Even if they found Chu Xiu, it would be useless. Those martial artists who fled were not too stupid. They still knew to split up. After Chu Xiu caught up with one, the others also ran far away. Chu Xiu rubbed his chin. This time, his traces were completely exposed. The distance was too close. No matter how he hid, the other party would follow his traces and chase after him. In fact, there was no difference between staying in Shangmang Mountain and going out. Moreover, if the other party really surrounded him, that would be the real danger. With Chu Xiu's current strength, facing a great expert who was at the unity of heaven and man realm was purely courting death. Therefore, he had to find the fastest way to break out of this situation. After thinking for a while, Chu Xiu suddenly remembered that he still had some karma in Wei County. Since the water was already so muddy, he might as well make it even muddier. Thinking of this, Chu Xiu did not delay. He directly ran down the mountain. The place he was headed to was Tongzhou Prefecture in Wei County. Early in the morning, Bai Qinhu and Meng Yuanlong brought some disciples with them. When they saw the corpses on the ground, their faces turned gloomy. The few people who had survived last night told them the news. This shocked Bai Qinhu and Meng Yuanlong. The others did not know how Chu Xiu stepped into the physical invulnerability realm. However, from the description, they could guess that Chu Xiu must have refined the blood jade exquisite dragon. That was how he stepped into the physical invulnerability realm. Moreover, he could use the blood-refined God Gang. However, they could not imagine how Chu Xiu was able to refine the blood jade exquisite dragon in less than a month. If it were them, they would not be able to do it. There was also the corpse of the martial artist from the northern floating snow city. He was killed in one move by someone using an extremely fierce and violent fist technique. Chu Xiu did not reveal that he knew such martial arts in the past. If not for their subordinates swearing that the person who killed the martial artist was Chu Xiu, they would even suspect that there was an outsider helping Chu Xiu. Chapter 133. Chu Xiu's actions had completely ruined Bai Qinhu and Meng Yuanlong's plans. It could be said that they had suffered a huge loss this time. Not only did they spend a large sum of money to hire a divination master from the wind-sweeping pavilion, but they also spent so much manpower and resources to come to the Shangmang Mountain to kill Chu Xiu. Wasn't it all for the blood jade chestnut? But now, Chu Xiu actually told them that he had refined the blood jade crystal. This made Bai Qinhu and Meng Yuanlong somewhat unable to accept it. Although they were angry that Chu Xiu dared to snatch food from the tiger's mouth, they were not as angry as the heavenly sin branch leader, who had been schemed against by Chu Xiu and was determined to kill him. Their target had always been the blood jade. But now, the blood jade crystal was gone. Even if they killed Chu Xiu, what was the point? Meng Yuanlong's expression was gloomy. Are we still chasing? Now that he clearly knew that the blood jade crystal was gone, there didn't seem to be much meaning in continuing the pursuit besides killing Chu Xiu to vent his anger. Bai Qinhu gritted his teeth. After paying such a huge price, we have already found his tracks. Why aren't we chasing after him? The blood jade crystal is gone, but Chu Xiu has a lot of techniques on him. Let's squeeze as many out of him as we can. Anyway, we can't come here for nothing. Meng Yuanlong nodded. He was thinking the same. At the very least, they had to bring back something to the morgue village. Right, do we need to tell the people from the Blue Dragon Society? Bai Qinhu coldly snorted, no need to tell them. The Blue Dragon Society only has a few hundred assassins. Their numbers are limited. Let them look for him themselves. Moreover, Heavenly Sin Division leader is a bit narrow-minded. His main goal is to vent his anger and take revenge. We are going to capture him alive and interrogate him for his techniques. If Heavenly Sin Division leader kills Chu Xiu in a single move, we will have suffered a huge loss. Meng Yuanlong didn't care. But after hearing Bai Qinhu's words, the two ordered the others to gather and follow the traces left by Chu Xiu. Compared to the angry Bai Qinhu and Meng Yuanlong, Chu Xiu was leisurely strolling on the streets of the Tongzhou prefecture. After not returning to the Tongzhou prefecture for more than a year, the Tongzhou prefecture had changed. Of the three great families in the Tong state prefecture, the Li family had been exterminated by Chu Xiu. The Shen family and the Chu family had been exterminated in a single night. It could be said that the few great powers in the Tong state prefecture had been wiped out in an instant. However, the Tongzhou prefecture was close to the Yan kingdom and could be considered a large prefecture in Wei County. No one would want to see the Tongzhou prefecture decline, so the current Tongzhou prefecture was like a three-legged tripod. One of them was the Zhou clan, which migrated from another prefecture and had a Xiantian realm martial artist. There was also the Green Wolf gang, which had two Xiantian experts. The three of them were originally bandits in Shangmang Mountain. In the end, Shangmang Mountain was controlled by Han Bao and the other bandits could no longer survive. The three from the Green Wolf gang took the opportunity to take control of the Tongzhou prefecture, and became the strongest force there. The last one was the Shen clan. Shenemo might be dead, but the Shen clan was still around. But without the Xiantian realm martial artist, the Shen clan became the weakest faction in the Tongzhou prefecture. When Shenemo was around, Shenbai would still take care of the Shen clan. Now that Shenemo was dead, the Shen clan had nothing to do with Shenbai. Shenbai was a person with a truly cold heart. To the Shen clan that raised him, he didn't have the slightest bit of affection. In his opinion, the clansmen of the Shen clan, except for his younger brother, were all a bunch of trash. It was better for them to die earlier. If they died earlier, his younger brother would be able to follow him into the Azure Water Sword sect to cultivate without any worries. Now that his younger brother was dead, the Shen clan didn't matter to him anymore. As long as they didn't bother him, the Shen clan could go wherever they wanted. In the beginning, the other factions in the Tongzhou prefecture would still be apprehensive of Shenbai and didn't dare to offend the Shen clan. But after knowing Shenbai's attitude, they didn't have the slightest bit of apprehension towards the Shen clan. All kinds of bullying and suppression, but Shenbai didn't even ask. The other factions were finally relieved, while the Shen clan was in complete despair. Chu Xiu aimlessly walked on the streets. This time, he was here to make his presence known. It would be best if he could stir up some trouble. It was just that when Chu Xiu didn't want to stir up trouble, some trouble would line up. But when he wanted to stir up trouble, there would be no trouble. Chu Xiu walked to the Chu clan's restaurant. This restaurant was also managed by Chu Xiu back then, and he even stayed here for a period of time. Seeing Chu Xiu walk in, the restaurant's shopkeeper subconsciously raised his head and was immediately shocked. He quickly walked over and said, "Second young master. You're back?" The restaurant's shopkeeper was just an ordinary person. He was in charge of managing the restaurant, but he didn't know about the major events that happened in the martial world. He naturally knew about the extermination of the Chu clan. He only vaguely heard that Chu Xiu didn't die, but he didn't know that Chu Xiu was once wanted by the Azure Water Sword sect. "Second young master, you're back to rebuild the Chu clan?" The shopkeeper actually had a trace of expectation on his face. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "The Chu clan is already gone, what's the point of rebuilding? Old Fong, arrange a seat for me. You should know my taste." After shopkeeper Fong arranged a seat for Chu Xiu then asked, "Which clan is managing this restaurant now?" Shopkeeper Fong bitterly pointed to himself and said, "I'm managing it myself. It doesn't belong to that clan." Chu Xiu laughed and said, "Oh, that's not bad." Shopkeeper Fong put on a long face and said, "But this lowly one would rather go back to the Chu clan and be a shopkeeper." Back when the Chu clan was in trouble, the Shen clan took over the restaurant. But then for some unknown reason, the Shen clan actually left, and the Green Wolf gang came. The Green Wolf gang didn't occupy my restaurant, but they had a request. They wanted me to fork out a large sum of money, and this restaurant would be considered my people. I gritted my teeth and took the money. After all, the Chu clan was gone, and this lowly one had to think about his future. But who would have thought that after taking the money, the Green Wolf gang would use the excuse of collecting protection fees to take a large sum of money from this lowly one every month. Originally, taking the money was fine. I just treated it as spending money to buy peace. Every month, this lowly one would pay the money on time. In the end, the Green Wolf gang would come every few days to eat and drink for free. They even wanted to book the entire restaurant, scaring away many customers. They would come every few days and seriously affect the restaurant's business. In the past few months, I've been working at a loss. This treatment really can't compare to when this lowly one was still in the Chu clan. The restaurant's shopkeeper complained when he saw Chu Xiu. If this continued, he would lose his job as the restaurant's shopkeeper. At worst, he would just have to find another place to make a living. At this time, a rough-looking Xiantian martial artist led a large group of noisy martial artists into the restaurant. Before they even saw anyone, the leading martial artist shouted, "Where are they? Old Fong, clear the second floor for me. Prepare all the good food and drinks for me." Same old rules. The shopkeeper had a helpless look on his face. "They're here again. Second young master, why don't you go downstairs first? I'll prepare a seat for you." This shopkeeper wasn't a member of the pugilistic world, so he didn't know the difference in strength between martial artists. However, he seemed to have heard that the two leaders of the Green Wolf gang were on the same level as the Chu clan's previous patriarch. Second young master definitely wouldn't be able to defeat them. A strange look flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. He waved his hand casually. The shopkeeper wanted to say something, but the Green Wolf gang martial artist walked over with a frown. "Old Fong, what are you still doing here? Didn't you hear me clearly when I told you to clear the place?" As he spoke, the Green Wolf gang martial artist glanced at Chu Xiu and shouted coldly, "Get lost." Chu Xiu glanced at him and said indifferently, "You're really used to being a bandit. Now that you've come ashore and washed your hands clean, you're still so arrogant. You're the kind of person who doesn't know your place." No wonder even two Xiantian martial artists were chased out of Shangmang Mountain by Han Bao. With this kind of behavior, it's no wonder you can't fight Han Bao enough. Chu Xiu's words immediately made the Green Wolf gang martial artist's face turn black. Being a bandit wasn't a good birth unless one reached the level of the 36 great bandits of the northern lands. Hence, he hated it when people mentioned the word bandit in front of him. Moreover, being chased out of Shangmang Mountain by Han Bao was their reverse scale. It was the most humiliating moment of their lives. Now that he heard Chu Xiu mention this matter, the Green Wolf gang martial artist immediately pointed at Chu Xiu and shouted, "Little brat. I think you're living a..." However, before he could finish his sentence, Chu Xiu's hand moved and directly pressed the martial artist's head onto the table with the great sacrificial grappling hand. A chopstick suddenly appeared in Chu Xiu's right hand and suddenly stabbed into the martial artist's temple. With a soft, pu sound, the martial artist was directly nailed to the table. This horrifying scene immediately scared the people present into silence. Chu Xiu stood up slowly and said indifferently, "How troublesome. I can't even eat in peace." With that, Chu Xiu directly walked down the stairs. When the other Green Wolf gang martial artists saw Chu Xiu walking over, some of them were so frightened that they directly knelt on the ground and trembled. It wasn't that they were too timid, but the scene in front of them was simply shocking to them. In the eyes of these ordinary gang members, their Xiantian realm sect leader was already considered an expert. In the end, he was killed like a chicken. No, it was even easier than killing a chicken. Just like that, the head of the Green Wolf Gang's sect leader was nailed to the table with a chopstick. Looking at the twitching corpse of the Green Wolf Gang's sect leader, it was already good enough that they didn't wet their pants. When Chu Xiu completely left and disappeared from the long street, the entire restaurant seemed to be in an uproar. They began to frantically discuss who that person was and why he had such strong strength. Chapter 134. The Tongzhou Prefecture was only so big. Usually, even a small matter would be known within a day, let alone the news of a Xiantian martial artist from the Green Wolf Gang being killed. Shopkeeper Fong didn't realize the sensitivity of Chu Xiu's identity and directly revealed Chu Xiu's identity, which caused another commotion. Ordinary people might not know of Chu Xiu's identity, but how could they not know? After all, when the Azure Water Sword sect issued an arrest warrant for Chu Xiu in Wei County, it caused a huge commotion. Almost all the martial artists in the Tongzhou Prefecture knew of it. Within the Shen clan, a few of the Shen clan's elders had a delighted expression when they heard the news. It wasn't because they found Shen Mo's murderer, but because they could use this news to curry favor with Shen Bai. Ever since Shen Mo's death, their Shen clan no longer had any relations with Shen Bai. Naturally, they no longer had the protection of the Azure Water Sword sect. Unless they produced a Xiantian realm martial artist, the Shen clan would completely decline. To the other major sects, Xiantian martial artists were considered normal. There were even some disciples who could reach the Xiantian realm in their teens. But to a small clan like the Shen clan, a Xiantian martial artist was the strongest force that could suppress the clan. Without a Xiantian martial artist, they could only endure being oppressed. After a few of the Shen clan's elders finished discussing, they immediately decided to send someone to inform Shen Bai at the Azure Water Sword sect. They had to be the first to deliver the news. The Azure Water Sword sect was called the Azure Water Sword sect because there was a long river below the Azure Water Sword sect, named Azure Water River. It was said that this Zhanglan River was created when two ancient martial artists fought. One of them used a sword to slash out a river. Of course, this was only a legend. Many martial artists were doubtful. A sword slash was able to create a huge river. If those two were to fight to the death, wouldn't they have destroyed the entire Shangmang mountain? But the only thing that could be confirmed was that there were indeed sword Dao experts who fought at Zhanglan River. It was said that the Zhanglan sword sect's founding ancestor saw the sword scars left behind when the experts fought here. It was then that he suddenly had an epiphany and his strength improved greatly. Thus, he established the sect here, and after 1,000 years of development, it became one of the 7 sects and 8 schools, the Zhanglan sword sect. At this moment, within the Azure Water Sword sect's mountain gate, Shen Bai was seated in the conference hall. Looking at the news from the Shen clan, his expression didn't have the slightest change. An Azure Water Sword sect disciple below him asked, "Senior brother, the Shen clan is still waiting for news outside. What should we do?" Shen Bai expressionlessly waved his hand. "Go give them a sword with our Azure Water Sword sect's mark and send them off the mountain." Shen Bai knew why the people of the Shen family were here. It was just that he didn't want to have any relations with the Chen clan. He just casually tossed them a sword with the Azure Water Sword sect's insignia, and it was enough to intimidate them. Shen Bai put down the news and went straight to a courtyard in the back mountain of the Azure Water Sword sect. He respectfully knocked on the door and an old voice came from inside, "Come in." Shen Bai pushed the door and entered. In the courtyard, there was an old man dressed in gray sitting on the ground. Although his beard and hair were all white and his face was old, his back was still straight without the slightest sign of stooping. His aura was extraordinary. There was a chessboard in front of the old man, but there was no opponent. He was actually playing chess with himself. This old man was the current Azure Water Sword sect master. "One sword sinks the river," Lu Gongyuan. In the past, Lu Gongyuan supported the Azure Water Sword sect with his own strength. When he took over the sect in his prime, he once fought with someone on this Tsanglan River. The power of his sword temporarily cut off the flow of Tsanglan River and sank his opponent to the bottom of the river. This was why he was known as One Sword Sinks the River. But the current Lu Gongyuan was already old. He was nearly 300 years old this year. Even if he had the cultivation of the martial Dao true pellet realm, he couldn't withstand the erosion of time. Above the fifth level of Qi controlling realm was the three realms of spirit refinement. Those who could reach these three realms were all at the master level and could support a top sect in the pugilistic world. All the sects that appeared on the pugilistic world song had at least one martial Dao master who reached the three realms of spirit condensation. The three realms of spirit condensation were martial Dao true pellet, true fire spirit refinement, and heaven and earth mystic. At the first realm of martial Dao true pellet realm, one's lifespan could already reach more than 300 years. In other words, Lu Gongyuan was now close to the end of his lifespan. In the past, Lu Gongyuan's name was on the reputation list. But now, Lu Gongyuan hadn't fought for more than 10 years and had long been removed from the list. Master. Shenbai bowed and sat in front of Lu Gongyuan. Seeing his last disciple that he had painstakingly nurtured, Lu Gongyuan's mouth revealed a hint of a smile. Is there any confusion on the martial Dao? Shenbai shook his head and said in a deep voice, Master, 1 year ago, the person who killed my brother appeared in Wei County again. I want to borrow the power of the Azure Water Sword sect to go down the mountain to find him and kill him. Lu Gongyuan was silent for a moment, raised his head and looked into Shenbai's eyes. In the pugilistic world, there are some things that you can't do just because you want to. Shenbai, you are my last disciple. When you stepped into the Azure Water Sword sect, I knew that you were the disciple I wanted. All these years, I restricted you to cultivate in the Azure Water Sword sect. Even though your strength has reached the physical invulnerability realm, I didn't let you go out to explore the pugilistic world. Do you know why? Without waiting for Shenbai to answer, Lu Gongyuan said in a deep voice, because I want you to amaze the pugilistic world with a single brilliant feat. My Azure Water Sword sect has been silent for long enough. I am old, and the Azure Water Sword sect can only defend Wei County. But you are still young, and I am prepared to hand over the future of the Azure Water Sword sect to you. Among the younger generation of the pugilistic world, the strength of the physical invulnerability realm is indeed not bad, but it is still not enough. You are not Nye Donglu from the Morgue Manor. With the identity of the Morgue Manor's young master, you are famous for your smooth methods and entered the Longhu leaderboard before the age of 20. You are also not the prodigy young celestial master Zhang Chengzhen from the celestial master's abode of Mount Longhu. When you were born, a ray of light shot into the sky and a thunder pattern appeared on your palm. You were immediately listed as the next celestial master's successor and monopolized the Longhu leaderboard for 17 years. You are not them, so you can only rely on your own hard work to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat before you condense the 3 flowers above your head. I will not let you fight because you only have one chance to fight. This time, you must let the entire pugilistic world remember you and let you enter the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. Taking a deep look at Shenbai, Lu Gongyuan said in a deep voice, only the reputation of the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard can suppress your seniors. When I took you in as my last disciple, it caused a lot of dissatisfaction. I nurtured you as the sect master's successor, but you don't have the title of a successor. I can give you this title, but it will cause unrest in the Azure Water Sword sect and cause everyone to be dissatisfied. Only when the day comes that you can truly bear this title, will I officially give it to you. Shenbai took a deep breath. These were words that Lu Gongyuan had never said to him before, but he could vaguely feel it. When Lu Gongyuan took him in as a disciple, some of his seniors were already over 100 years old, and some were even close to 200 years old. These people were all elders of the Azure Water Sword sect, but he had to call them seniors. These people also had disciples. Some were young, some were in the prime of their lives, and they all had the qualifications to compete for the successor of the Azure Water Sword sect. But they had to call Shen by martial uncle, so of course these people would not be convinced by him. Looking at Lu Gongyuan, Shen Bai said in a deep voice, "Disciple understands, I will not go after Chu Xiu." Lu Gongyuan nodded with satisfaction. People in the pugilistic world are always helpless. Everything has to be considered for the big picture. Sometimes, even if it is the hatred of killing one's father or stealing one's wife, one must endure it. But at this moment, Shen Bai suddenly said, "But Master, I cannot do anything, but I still want to ask the Azure Water Sword sect to send out a portion of their disciples to kill Chu Xiu. If I turn a blind eye to my enemy passing by right under my nose, I will not accept it." This time, Lu Gongyuan did not stop him. He nodded and said, "Don't worry, I will arrange it." Shen Bai was someone he fancied. Whether the Azure Water Sword sect could rise again in the future would depend on him. This was the same as how his master nurtured him. It wasn't too difficult for the Azure Water Sword sect to send people to pursue and kill a person within their capabilities. With the addition of the Azure Water Sword sect, the people chasing after Chu Xiu changed from 3 to 4. Currently, Chu Xiu was hiding in the southern Shangmang mountain. Whether or not they could repel the people from the mortuary manor and the northern drifting snow city would depend on this time. In the dense forest of the southern Shangmang mountain, a Xiantian realm martial artist from the Azure Water Sword sect was searching in boredom. This time, they were sent down the mountain to search for Chu Xiu. In fact, these disciples weren't very willing. The sect didn't give them any rewards, and this time, it was purely voluntary work. And this time, the Azure Water Sword sect made a huge mistake, which was they didn't understand Chu Xiu's strength. Wei Prefecture was a little far from northern Yen. If they wanted to collect information on Chu Xiu, they could still collect it. But this time, the Azure Water Sword sect acted in a hurry, so they only obtained some rough information that was outdated. They still thought that Chu Xiu was only at the inner Aura realm. After all, when he made his move in the Tongzhou Prefecture, the surrounding people were ordinary people and low-level martial artists. When Chu Xiu intentionally concealed his presence, they couldn't see through Chu Xiu's true strength. Because of this, the martial artists that the Azure Water Sword sect sent out weren't very strong. There were even blood condensation realm martial artists. If this was seen by the mortuary manor and the northern drifting snow city who understood Chu Xiu, sending these low-level martial artists to chase after Chu Xiu was basically sending Chu Xiu's head. Just as the Azure Water Sword sect's martial artist was bored to death and searching, a black shadow suddenly flashed past his eyes. Just as the Azure Water Sword sect's martial artist wanted to draw his sword, he felt as though his spirit had sunk into an abyss and was completely immersed within. Chapter 135. Late at night, in the dense forest of the southern Shangmang mountain, the group of 5 from the northern Shangmang city was carefully searching in the dense forest. They had heard about how Chu Xiu had instantly killed a physical invulnerability realm expert. Therefore, most of the martial artists were moving in groups of 10. Only his group was unlucky. Because the other groups had enough people, they were moving in groups of 5. But now that Chu Xiu was seeking his own death, he actually walked out of the northern Shangmang mountain and showed himself in the Tongzhou Prefecture. This made them more certain of his location. In addition, the area of the southern Shangmang mountain was much smaller than the northern Shangmang mountain. As long as they continued searching for a few days, they would completely surround Chu Xiu. At that time, this troublesome task would be over. But at this moment, the 5 suddenly noticed movement in front of them. They immediately ran over and saw a martial artist dressed in blue holding a sword. He was only in the Xiantian realm. Seeing that this person was not Chu Xiu, the people from the northern Shangmang city heaved a sigh of relief. The physical invulnerability martial artist couldn't help but snort, "Who are you? What are you doing in the dense forest of the Shangmang mountain at night?" The martial artist shouted, "I should be the one asking you that. Do you know whose territory this is? How dare you be so arrogant here? You're simply courting death." Because it was late at night, the 5 people from the northern Shangmang city didn't notice the sluggish look in the martial artist's eyes. But when they heard this, the 5 people immediately exploded. The northern Drifts Now city was a hegemon-like existence in the northern lands. Even the generals of the northern Yen kingdom would have to give them face. As time went by, the martial artists from the northern Shangmang city were more or less infected with some violent and overbearing characters. Regarding this matter, the experts from the northern Shangmang city didn't correct it because they also had such characters. Now that this Xiantian realm martial artist dared to be so arrogant here, it immediately ignited the anger of the martial artist from the northern Shangmang city. Since when did a puny Xiantian realm martial artist dare to be so arrogant in front of him? The martial artist from the northern Shangmang city snorted, "I think you're the one courting death. The most important thing in Jianghu is to know the rules and know respect. Today, I will teach you what respect is." Just at this moment, the Xiantian martial artist actually pulled out the sword in his hand. This caused the eyes of the Outer Dipper realm martial artist from the northern Drifting Snow city to twitch. A martial artist of the innate realm actually dared to draw his sword against him. Was he overconfident, or was he simply blind, unable to see through the aura of the physical invulnerability realm? But no matter what, a puny Xiantian realm martial artist actually dared to draw his sword in front of him. This made the physical invulnerability realm martial artist of the northern Fluttering Snow city feel insulted. He had only intended to teach the other party a small lesson, but now, he directly struck out with his palm, bringing with it an extremely dense chill. He was prepared to directly cripple the brat first. Xiantian Mang City. With, and Xiantian World Mang City. With, he had Mang City, Hang Mang City, Hang Mang City. His palm landed and Xiantian World Mang City seemed to have gone mad. Xiantian World Mang City didn't even use his sword art and just thrust his sword at him. The Xiantian World Mang City martial artist's chest caved in and a large amount of blood gushed out. The sluggishness in his eyes finally dissipated, and he regained his clarity. But just as he wanted to say something, he couldn't say a single word. Finally, he fell to the ground and breathed no more. The physical invulnerability martial artist from the northern Shangmang city looked at his hand in doubt and then at the corpse. He felt that something was wrong. Was there something wrong with this kid's head? First, he was disrespectful to him. Then, he didn't even dodge when he attacked. It was as if he was committing suicide. Right now, Chu Xiu was on a tree less than 10 feet away from them. His aura was silent to the extreme, just like a dead man. Looking at the scene below, Chu Xiu muttered in his heart, "They should be here soon." Just as this thought flashed through his mind, there was a commotion coming from afar. A physical invulnerability martial artist from the Azure Water Sword sect led 7 or 8 martial artists over. They were previously attracted by the traces that Chu Xiu intentionally left behind. But just now, they heard the sounds of fighting, which was why they rushed over. But when they arrived, they saw the corpses of their Azure Water Sword sect martial artists. Junior brother. The physical invulnerability martial artist's expression suddenly changed. He pointed at the people from the northern Shangmang city and shouted, "You people from the northern Shangmang city have some guts. You actually dare to kill our Azure Water Sword sect's people in our territory. Do you really think our Azure Water Sword sect is a pushover?" The people from the northern Shangmang city didn't know that the Azure Water Sword sect was pursuing Chu Xiu, but the Azure Water Sword sect knew about them. Both parties might have the same target, but their objectives were different. Therefore, there was no communication. Furthermore, the relationship between the Wei County's sects and the Northern Yen sects wasn't good. There was no need for communication. As a result, when the disciple from the northern Shangmeng city realized that he actually killed someone from the Azure Water Sword sect, he immediately cursed in his heart. The northern Shangmeng city and the Azure Water Sword sect were both part of the 7 sects and 8 factions. But in reality, the northern Shangmeng city had never placed the Azure Water Sword sect in their eyes. In the entire Azure Water Sword sect, except for the old Lu Gongyuan, the rest were all mediocre. When Lu Gongyuan could no longer pick up his sword, the Azure Water Sword sect would probably be squeezed out of the 7 sects and 8 factions. But no matter how weak the Azure Water Sword sect was, this was still the Wei County, which was also the Azure Water Sword sect's territory. Their own disciple was killed in their own territory. This was basically a provocation and an insult. If it was the northern Shangmeng city, they would probably be even more enraged. On top of the tree, Chu Xiu's eyes had already turned pitch black like a deep abyss. The heaven-extinguishing earth soul shift technique's prowess was pushed to the extreme, affecting the Azure Water Sword sect's martial artists and pushing their inner anger to the maximum. In the past, Chu Xiu only used the soul-shifting technique to affect one person. But now, he had to affect more than 10 people at the same time. Even if only 2 of them were physical invulnerability experts, the mental strength consumption was still significant. Therefore, when Chu Xiu used the soul-shifting technique, he simultaneously formed a seal with both hands and executed the fast and slow 9 words formula. Swordsman formula, inner lion seal, main recovery, invincible. The qi within Chu Xiu's body was constantly circulating. The inner lion seal was suppressing his body, constantly transforming his inner qi into mental strength to maintain the consumption. The original use of the inner lion seal was to heal, or to suppress one's body during an intense battle and prevent the injury from erupting. Now that Chu Xiu was using it to suppress his mental strength, it was somewhat effective. At this moment, the martial artist from the northern Shangmeng city also knew that the problem was huge, so he immediately said, "Brothers, please listen to me, this is actually a misunderstanding my ass. You killed my Azure Water Sword sect's disciple, pay with your own life first." The leading Azure Water Sword sect martial artist didn't know why, but his heart was surging with anger. Originally, they were considered peaceful, but now they were even more irritable than the northern Shangmeng city's people. They immediately brandished their swords and fought with the northern Shangmeng city's people. The northern Shangmeng city's people initially planned to defend, but seeing that the other side didn't show any mercy, they decided to just kill. Their northern Shangmeng city's people didn't have a small temper. If the other side wanted to kill them, how could they still show mercy? As a result, both sides immediately fought to the death. After a few moves, blood had already been seen. At this moment, even without the influence of Chu Xiu's heaven-extinguishing soul shift technique, both sides were completely unable to separate. On the tree, Chu Xiu withdrew the heaven-extinguishing soul shift technique. His head was already covered in cold sweat, and there was even a slight tingling sensation in his head. Did I overexert my mental strength? Chu Xiu rubbed his head. The heaven and earth intersecting yin and yang great sorrow poem was truly worthy of being a 9-revolution class evil art. Even if it was just one of the cultivation techniques, the current Chu Xiu still couldn't fully control it. Once the heaven-extinguishing soul shift technique reached the great completion stage, it would have the prowess of soul shifting and could unknowingly strangle the opponent in the illusion. After taking a glance below, Chu Xiu immediately turned and left. With such a huge commotion here, it should be able to attract most of the martial artists in the southern Shangmeng mountain. The rest would have to depend on the development of the situation. He believed that as long as the Azure Water Sword sect wasn't so cowardly, the Mortuary Manor and northern Shangmeng city's people would definitely not stay in Wei County. Early in the morning, Bai Qinhu and Meng Yuanlong looked at the dozens of corpses on the ground with a gloomy expression. They couldn't understand why their side would actually fight with the Azure Water Sword sect. Furthermore, it was on such a large scale. They had already inquired about the process of the battle. It was true that their side was rather reckless and didn't find out the details of the other party before making a move. But the Azure Water Sword sect's performance was a little too agitated. It was just the death of a Xiantian martial artist and the other party wasn't willing to let it go. As a result, it evolved into a huge battle and both sides lost dozens of people. After some time, Meng Yuanlong spoke in a deep voice, "I'm afraid this matter isn't going to end so easily." Bai Qinhu coldly snorted, "Of course I know that too. But the person has already been killed, so what? Furthermore, my northern Shangmeng city has also suffered a lot of casualties." Right at this moment, over 100 sword-wielding martial artists galloped over. The one in the middle looked to be over 60 years old and carried a red and blue longsword on his back. He walked over with an angry expression. "It is Lu Gongyuan's first disciple, Flame Frost Sword Do Guangchen." Bai Qinhu and Meng Yuanlong squinted their eyes at the same time. This Do Guangchen was actually over 100 years old and had a rather high status in the Azure Water Sword sect. He was definitely second only to Lu Gongyuan. Since the other party sent out their first disciple, it was obvious that they didn't come with good intentions. When they got closer, Bai Qinhu cupped his hands and said, "Brother Do, last night's incident was actually a misunderstanding." Before he could finish, Do Guangchen interrupted, "Withdraw from Wei County within 3 days. Otherwise, my master will personally make a move. My master's sword has not been unsheathed for over 10 years. The people of the pugilistic world might have already forgotten that my master's sword can not only sink a river, but it can also slash a mountain." Chapter 136. Azure Water Sword sect's attitude was shocking. In fact, Azure Water Sword sect was infuriated. Not only did Mortuary Manor and Northern Drifting Snow City enter the Wei Prefecture in large numbers, they didn't even inform them. Now they even dared to kill in Azure Water Sword sect's territory. They were simply looking down on them. If this incident happened to the Divine Martial sect or the other Northern Yen sects, they might give the Drifting Snow City of the extreme north a chance to explain, but the Azure Billow Sword sect wouldn't. The reason was simple: the Azure Billow Sword sect didn't have a good relationship with the major martial arts factions of the Northern Yen. In the past, the Northern Yen Imperial Court and the Northern Yen Pugilistic World cooperated in many ways. The rise of Northern Yen, the counterattack against Eastern Qi and the destruction of the Wei Kingdom, turning it into the Wei Prefecture, were all thanks to the Northern Yen Pugilistic World's major factions. As a sect in the Wei Prefecture, Azure Water Sword sect had some connections with the former Wei Kingdom's Imperial Court. Even when Azure Water Sword sect was at its peak, they couldn't do without the support of the Wei Kingdom's Imperial Court. As a result, the Wei Kingdom was destroyed and became the Northern Yan's Wei Prefecture. Azure Water Sword sect suffered a great loss in strength and had many conflicts with the Northern Yen Pugilistic World's factions. Now, Azure Water Sword sect didn't directly make a move against them, which was already a sign of forbearance. This time, Chu Xiu dared to plot against both sides because he knew this, which was why he chose this method to break the stalemate. Of course, Chu Xiu had also thought of the worst scenario. Azure Water Sword sect might swallow this incident and admit defeat. But this probability was very small. For a sect of the Azure Water Sword sect's level, sometimes face was more important than anything else. If such a thing happened, Chu Xiu's strength had improved greatly. As long as he could find a chance to avoid Bai Qinhu and Meng Yuanlong, he was confident he could break out of the encirclement. But as for the price he would have to pay, Chu Xiu didn't dare to guess. Right now, the Azure Water Sword sect's attitude was incomparably domineering. Even with Bai Qinhu's irritable personality, he had no choice but to endure. In terms of strength, although this guy in front of him was also an expert in the oneness of heaven and man realm, his reputation in the Jianghu could not be compared to that of Bai Qinhu, the 13th master of Drifting Snow City in the extreme north. But Lu Gongyuan was representing the Azure Water Sword sect. Looking at Lu Gongyuan's attitude, if they didn't leave now, they might provoke Lu Gongyuan. Bai Qinhu gritted his teeth and said, "Let's go." This time, the far north's floating snow city and the morgue could be considered to have suffered a great loss. Not only did they spend a fortune teller to deduce Chu Xiu's location, they also lost plenty of men during the pursuit of Chu Xiu and the conflict with the Azure Water Sword sect. It could be said that they suffered a double loss. Dou Guangchen coldly laughed. So what if it was the Drifts Now city of the extreme north? So what if it was the morgue? This was Wei County. Seeing the two factions retreating, Dou Guangchen waved his hand and led the Azure Water Sword sect's men away. Chu Xiu didn't see this scene. He dared to conceal his chi presence in front of some low-level martial artists and martial artists of the same rank, but he didn't dare to play such tricks in front of a oneness of heaven and man expert. At the oneness of heaven and man realm, one could use their own strength to sense the changes in heaven and earth. Their perception would also increase drastically. Chu Xiu didn't even dare to appear within 300 meters of such an expert. After waiting for a few days, Chu Xiu didn't find any traces of the two factions in the forest. He was then certain that the other party had retreated. As for the Blue Dragon Society, Chu Xiu didn't put them in his eyes. It wasn't because the Blue Dragon Society wasn't strong enough, but because the Blue Dragon Society didn't have enough members. The entire Heavenly Sin branch only had a little over 100 members. If they were all here to search for Chu Xiu, would the Blue Dragon Society still be able to complete their mission? As long as the Heavenly Sin branch leader wasn't an idiot, after seeing the Drifts Now city and the morgue retreating, he would also retreat. But what surprised Chu Xiu was that after the two factions retreated, the Azure Water Sword sect was still searching for him. They even sealed off most of the exits of the southern Mang Mountain and patrolled back and forth. This made Chu Xiu frown. If there was only one faction, Chu Xiu was confident he could escape, but it would depend on his luck. If he chose to escape from the sealed area, there were only physical invulnerability realm martial artists. Even if there were a few more, Chu Xiu was confident he could escape. But if he encountered the 3-flower condensation, 5 chi condensation, or even the unity of heaven and man realm experts, Chu Xiu reckoned that even if he burst out with the fastest speed with the internal binding seal, the chances of escaping would be very small. Therefore, Chu Xiu simply stayed in the dense forest of the southern Mang Mountain. Anyway, he still had the elixirs and other cultivation resources that he accumulated when he was an assassin in the Blue Dragon Society. It would be enough for him to use for a long time. Right now, Chu Xiu had just stepped into the physical invulnerability realm. This period of time was just right for him to solidify his foundation. Inside the Azure Water Sword sect, Dou Guangchen arrived at Lu Gongyuan's residence and reported respectfully, "Master, the matter has been resolved. The morgue and the Drifts Now city have all retreated from Wei County." Lu Gongyuan nodded and said, "It's good that they have retreated. Guangchen, you have also seen it. All these years, our Azure Water Sword sect has been trapped in Wei County and hasn't made a move in the pugilistic world for a long time. I'm afraid the other pugilistic world sects have long looked down on us. Bai Qinhu and Meng Yuanlong aren't newbies either. They all know the rules of the pugilistic world. Yet, they brought a large number of people to Wei County to capture people and didn't even give a single explanation to our Azure Water Sword sect. It's obvious that in their hearts, they don't even care about our Azure Water Sword sect." Dou Guangchen said in a deep voice, "Master, please be at ease. Junior Brother's talent is right there. In the future, when Junior Brother steps into the real pellet realm and becomes a martial Dao master, he will definitely be able to lead our Azure Water Sword sect out of Wei County and become famous in the pugilistic world." If Dou Guangchen's words were heard by other Azure Water Sword sect members, they would definitely be shocked. Because he was Lu Gongyuan's first disciple, the one with the highest qualifications and prestige in the Azure Water Sword sect apart from Lu Gongyuan. All the Azure Water Sword sect disciples knew that Dou Guangchen had long been dissatisfied with Lu Gongyuan's favoritism towards Shenbai. In fact, Dou Guangchen didn't even have a good attitude towards Shen Bai and even tried to suppress him. In the end, he actually said such words in front of Lu Gongyuan. Looking at Dou Guangchen, Lu Gongyuan sighed and said, "Guangchen, it's been hard on you to be the bad guy in front of Shen Bai all these years. To be honest, do you feel any regret? If there was no Shen Bai, the position of the sect master would be yours." Dou Guangchen smiled and said, "Master, you know that others might have this thought, but I definitely won't. Even when I decided to be the bad guy in front of junior brother and give him pressure, it was also me who suggested it. My life was saved by Master back then. If it wasn't for Master and the Azure Water Sword sect, I, Dou Guangchen, would just be a small pickpocket bullied by the bullies in the Black Street. Who knows when I might be beaten to death. When I was learning martial arts, I had already passed the optimal period, causing my foundation to be unstable. Even though I am now at the peak of the 5th level of Qi controlling, I am still unable to draw in the power of heaven and earth to refine the martial Dao true elixir. Right now, what my Azure Water Sword sect needs is someone who can support the entire sect and turn the tide. This person isn't me, it can only be junior brother. Everything I am doing now is not for junior brother, but for the Azure Water Sword sect." Lu Gongyuan sighed and said, "You have already repaid the kindness I showed you in the past. All these years, it is me and the Azure Water Sword sect that owes you." After sighing, Lu Gongyuan asked again, "Have you guys found Chu Xiu?" Dou Guangchen shook his head and said, "I am only temporarily sealing the exit of the southern Death Mang Mountain. I have not officially started the search. After all, the southern Death Mang Mountain isn't considered small. With our Azure Water Sword sect's members, we won't be able to search all of them. Therefore, I am preparing to inform the other sects to help with the search." But at this moment, Lu Gongyuan said, "There is no need to search. Just send people to seal off the southern Death Mang Mountain first. After a few months, withdraw the people." Dou Guangchen was astonished. "Why are you doing this? Isn't Chu Xiu junior brother's enemy? If we find him, we can take revenge for junior brother." Lu Gongyuan said indifferently, "It is precisely because Chu Xiu is Shen Bai's enemy that I want to let him go this time. Ever since joining the Azure Water Sword sect, Shen Bai's path has been too smooth. Or rather, he doesn't have any big goals. He only knows to wholeheartedly cultivate and amaze the world with a single brilliant feat, but he doesn't know how to take the first step. I have investigated Chu Xiu's information. He is the exact opposite of Shen Bai. This person is completely from the wilderness. To be able to fight his way to his current strength, he is relying on his boldness and ruthlessness. He is even ranked 18th on the Dragon and Tiger rankings. This Chu Xiu was Shen Bai's enemy, an obstacle on his path forward. The sect could remove this obstacle for him, but in this way, other than avenging his great hatred, what else could he obtain? Therefore, we cannot help him remove this obstacle. He needs to remove it himself. It can be said that this Chu Xiu is his stepping stone to enter the world and amaze the world with a single brilliant feat." Dou Guangchen hesitated and said, "But Master, what if junior brother dies in the hands of this Chu Xiu?" Over the years, there were many people in Jianghu who were born in the wilderness but held high positions. For example, Nie Renlong of the Charity Village. In the past, a few Jianghu newbies had formed a brotherhood in the Charity Village. In the eyes of other Jianghu people, it was just a joke. I am afraid that junior brother will suffer in the hands of Chu Xiu. If he is unable to recover from this setback, then our Azure Water Sword sect's efforts will be wasted." Looking at the distance outside the door, Lu Gongyuan said indifferently, "There are so many wilderness in the world, but there is only one Nie Renlong. Moreover, I need Shen Bai to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. If he can't even deal with a single Chu Xiu and needs the sect to help him, then why should we spend so much effort to nurture him? If I only want to nurture a successor of the Azure Water Sword sect, then the current Shen Bai is actually considered qualified. But now, I want to nurture a leader who can lead the Azure Water Sword sect to turn the tide. That Shenbai needs to be tempered far more than he can imagine. Chapter 137. Right now, Chu Xiu didn't know that his crisis had already been resolved. Even though it was resolved in a comical manner, he was used as a whetstone to hone his disciple, a stepping stone for the other party to become famous in the martial world. After staying in the dense forest of the southern Mang Mountain for several days, Chu Xiu realized that the Azure Water Sword sect only chose to seal off the exit of the southern Mang Mountain and didn't choose to search the mountain. Chu Xiu was relieved and immediately entered the depths of the forest to cultivate in seclusion. On the path of martial arts, Chu Xiu didn't have a teacher and was born from an unorthodox background. What he considered was actually very simple, just one word: become stronger. No matter what kind of cultivation technique, good or evil, as long as it could make Chu Xiu stronger, then everything would be fine. Among the cultivation techniques that Chu Xiu possessed, the strongest were actually the two parts of the heaven and earth converging yin and yang sorrowful prose and the fast and slow 9 words formula. Chu Xiu understood that the heaven and earth converging yin and yang sorrowful prose was definitely a demonic technique that could shock the heavens and make the gods weep. A pity that even if Chu Xiu had the benefit of knowing the plot, it was useless. Because in the original plot, no one was able to gather all 7 cultivation techniques and form the complete version of the heaven and earth converging yin and yang sorrowful prose. Now, if Chu Xiu wanted to gather the complete version, he could only rely on luck, and it could even be said that the chances were very slim. As for the fast and slow 9 words formula, this cultivation technique that didn't appear in the original plot gave Chu Xiu a great reward. Any one of the fast and slow 9 words formula was an extremely powerful cultivation technique, and it could be arranged and combined at will. When all the effects were added together, it could be considered as a perfect cultivation technique. For example, when Chu Xiu fully activated the soul-shifting technique with the heaven-extinguishing, earth-extinguishing and soul-shifting technique, he used the lion seal to suppress himself and prevent overexhaustion of his mental strength. This combination was very good. Therefore, during this period of seclusion, other than cultivating his own inner force and lengthening his gang qi, Chu Xiu focused on cultivating the fast and slow 9 words formula. He cultivated each style to a proficient or even proficient level. By the time Chu Xiu had cultivated the 9 words formula to the extreme, he would be able to unleash an even greater power by combining the 9 words into one. Although the 9 words formula only had 9 moves, it was actually 10. As he cultivated, Chu Xiu almost forgot the existence of time. He even forgot that he was still trapped in Shangmang Mountain. Half a year later, in the cave, Chu Xiu, who had been sitting in the same place for a month, suddenly opened his eyes, and a scarlet sharp light bloomed from his hand. The blood-refined god's shield suddenly exploded. It was 3 meters long and directly slashed the wall. There was no sound. It was like a clay ox entering the sea, directly sinking into the stone wall. During this half a year of cultivation, other than familiarizing himself with the fast and slow 9 words formula, Chu Xiu used the rest of the time to cultivate his inner force gang qi. Currently, Chu Xiu's blood-refined god shield could already burst out 3 meters. Although the improvement wasn't doubled, but in fact, a 3-meter-long gang qi had already surpassed 80% of the martial artists in the pugilistic world. Right now, he was only considered to be at the middle stage of the physical invulnerability realm, not even at the advanced stage. Dusting off the dust on his body, Chu Xiu concealed his qi presence and silently scouted towards the edge of the southern Shangmang Mountain. What surprised Chu Xiu was that he didn't even see a single Azure Wave Sword sect martial artist. But soon after, Chu Xiu felt relieved. After estimating the time, it had already been half a year since he was pursued. The Azure Wave Sword sect disciples also needed to cultivate. Just because of Shenbai's words, the entire Azure Wave Sword sect had to guard the southern Shangmang Mountain for half a year. Shenbai probably didn't have such a big influence. Even if the Azure Wave Sword sect master made such a decision, the other disciples would still carry it out, but they would still be dissatisfied. Since the Azure Wave Sword sect had already retreated, Chu Xiu naturally wouldn't delay any further. He immediately left the southern Shangmang mountain and headed towards the direction of Eastern Qi. He was prepared to enter Eastern Qi first before anything else. Right now, Chu Xiu was still in the Azure Wave Sword sect's territory. Only by leaving the Wei County would he be truly safe. Hence, after descending the mountain, Chu Xiu changed his clothes and dressed up a little before heading straight for Eastern Qi. With Chu Xiu's current speed, he only took 7 days to arrive at the border between the Wei County and Eastern Qi. But after stepping into a small town, Chu Xiu felt something was amiss. Actually, something was amiss. This feeling had been present since a few days after Chu Xiu descended the mountain. It was as though someone had discovered him. This feeling would only be felt when he was in a crowded city, but the other party didn't make a move. Even though Chu Xiu's spiritual force had greatly increased after cultivating the soul-shifting technique, he was still unable to ascertain who was watching him when there were so many people around him. That person, or those people, were definitely well-trained and wouldn't expose their expressions to Chu Xiu's senses. Hence, Chu Xiu guessed that someone must have discovered him, but the person who discovered him wasn't strong enough. They only dared to observe him in the dark in crowded places and followed him along the way. They didn't dare to directly appear in front of him. Chu Xiu could escape into the dense forest again, but if he wanted to enter the border of Eastern Qi, he would have to pass through these few small towns at the border. No matter what, he wouldn't be able to pass through. Now that Chu Xiu had stepped into this small town, the feeling instantly intensified. The other party even had a feeling of actively leaking their presence for him to detect. This presence was very strong, and the other party should have one more person, an expert at least in the physical invulnerability realm. Chu Xiu was actually somewhat familiar with this presence. Secretly frowning, Chu Xiu pretended not to notice and continued walking. After a while, the strong presence disappeared, leaving behind a more ordinary presence that was faintly discernible. It should be observing him from afar. Chu Xiu turned around and walked towards the place where the strong presence had leaked out. It was a small alley at the corner of a corner, and there was a hidden dart stuck in the wall. The dart was gold in color, and its body was slender. The tail of the dart was like a lifelike dragon's tail. It was extremely eye-catching. Chu Xiu's hand moved, and he silently kept the dragon tail soul-hunting dart into his arms. He couldn't help but reveal a strange look in his eyes. He had already recognized the owner of this dragon tail soul-hunting dart. It was Tangya. Previously in the Heavenly Sin branch, Tangya had a habit of playing with small, delicate hidden weapons in his hands. This dragon tail soul-hunting dart was one of them. If it was Tangya, then Chu Xiu knew who was secretly following him. It should be someone from the Heavenly Sin branch. It seemed like he had guessed wrong. The Heavenly Sin branch leader's narrow-mindedness exceeded Chu Xiu's expectations. The other party knew that the blood jade crystal had already been refined by Chu Xiu, and that staying here would affect the development of the Blue Dragon Society. Yet, he still didn't hesitate to kill Chu Xiu. Only those assassins from the Heavenly Sin branch could hide in the crowd and monitor him even though they were weaker than him. Moreover, they didn't lose him when he was hurrying. After all, these were the basic skills of an assassin. It was just that the people who followed Chu Xiu in the past were only at the Xiantian realm, so they didn't dare to show themselves. This time, however, Tangya came personally. Of course, what made Chu Xiu even more confused was why Tangya took the initiative to expose himself. Right now, Tangya's actions were very obvious. He was giving him a hint, telling him that the Blue Dragon Society was coming to kill him, and telling him to run for his life. However, the crux of the problem was that he didn't seem to have any relationship with Tangya in the Heavenly Sin branch. Among the assassins in the Heavenly Sin branch, the ones who had a good relationship with Chu Xiu were the Ghost Hand King and Fire Slave. As for Tangya, they had only cooperated a few times. They could talk, but their relationship wasn't that good. Why did Tangya take the initiative to warn him? Chu Xiu suddenly remembered that the Heavenly Sin branch leader had once chosen between him and Tangya. Who would be the scapegoat to attract the firepower? Could it be that Tangya had guessed this matter? However, this wasn't the time to think about this. A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. It was indeed time to resolve the matter of the Heavenly Sin branch. It was reasonable for the northern floating snow city and the Morgue village to hunt him down. After all, it was Chu Xiu who snatched the food from the tiger's mouth and snatched it from the hands of these two factions. However, as for the Heavenly Sin branch leader, he was the one who first schemed against Chu Xiu. In the end, Chu Xiu saw through it and schemed against him instead. Since the Heavenly Sin branch leader wanted to be relentless, Chu Xiu naturally wouldn't forget this grudge. After lowering his head and thinking for a while, the corner of Chu Xiu's mouth suddenly revealed a trace of a gloomy smile. This caused the assassin of the Blue Dragon Society who was secretly monitoring Chu Xiu to suddenly shiver. When he thought of the terrifying achievements of this person in the Heavenly Sin branch, he couldn't help but reveal a trace of panic in his eyes. He tried his best to maintain his facial expression as he quietly disappeared into the crowd. In a day's time, Chu Xiu walked to many places in this small town. It seemed as though he had left something behind, but it also seemed as though he was wandering aimlessly. This caused the assassin of the Blue Dragon Society who was monitoring Chu Xiu to feel extremely strange. When night fell, Chu Xiu walked into a small tavern. This caused the assassin of the Blue Dragon Society to immediately let out a sigh of relief. Calculating the time, the adults should have already arrived. After this, there was nothing for him to do. The sky was already dark. Apart from Chu Xiu, there were no other customers in the tavern. After ordering a few dishes and a pot of yellow wine, Chu Xiu had already stayed here for 4 hours. The tavern's manager looked at the sky and couldn't help but want to chase him away. However, when he stood up, before he could say anything, Chu Xiu took out a gold ingot and threw it in front of him. The manager bit the gold ingot with his teeth in disbelief. Such a big piece of gold was worth more than 10 taels. It was enough to buy a few taverns. "Dear customer, do you need me to make a few more dishes for you?" The manager jogged all the way to Chu Xiu's side and smiled flatteringly. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Let's go. I want to stay here for the night. There's no need to close the door." When the manager heard this, he immediately packed up his things and went back to sleep. With such a big piece of gold, even if Chu Xiu tore down his tavern, he wouldn't care. After waiting for the manager to leave for an hour, Chu Xiu poured a cup of wine and said indifferently, "We are all old acquaintances. There is no need to hide anymore. Come out." Chapter 138. In the silent night, a few black-clothed figures abruptly emerged from the darkness and walked into the tavern one by one. Most of them were Chu Xiu's acquaintances, Tangya, Yen Bugui, Ghost Hand Monarch, Fire Slave, and Wolf King. However, there was a stranger among them. He was around 30 years old and carried a long sword on his back. He was at the physical invulnerability realm, but his chi presence was weak and couldn't be compared to Tangya, Yen Bugui, or even Chu Xiu. He should have just entered the physical invulnerability realm. His mask was hanging on his waist and there were 2 sword scars, one green and one purple. He was currently looking at Chu Xiu with a judgmental and provocative gaze. Looking at the Ghost Hand Monarch and the others, Chu Xiu spoke indifferently, "Branch Master is really persistent. The people from the Morgue and the northern drifting snow city have all left. Even the nearby Azure Water Sword sect has withdrawn. Yet, he still asked you guys to keep watch in Wei Prefecture. He is really willing to pay the price. Fire Slave smiled bitterly and said, "Not all of us are here to keep watch. Instead, we are taking turns to come to Wei County to gather information. At least 1/3 to half of the entire Heaven Sin branch is guarding the southern Shangmang mountain." Looking at Chu Xiu, who was still leisurely drinking, the Ghost Hand Monarch sighed. "Chu Xiu, why bother? The Blood Jade Exquisite is a good item, but is it worth it to betray the Blue Dragon Society and be hunted by various factions?" Chu Xiu raised his brows and said, "Ghost Hand Monarch, you and I might not have known each other for long, but you should know what kind of person I am. Do you think I am the kind of person who would be blinded by greed? I don't want to betray the Blue Dragon Society either, but someone is forcing me to betray the Blue Dragon Society." The Ghost Hand Monarch frowned. "Forcing you to betray the Blue Dragon Society? Wasn't the Blood Jade Exquisite stolen by you?" Right at this moment, the Physical Invulnerability Realm martial artist snorted, "Ghost Hand Monarch, why are you wasting your breath on him? Lord Branch Master will be here soon. To deal with such a traitor, could it be that you still want Lord Branch Master to personally take action?" The Ghostly Hand King's face was a little ugly. Although he wasn't a physical invulnerability expert in the Heavenly Sin Division, he was the most experienced one. In the past, Tang Ye and Yen Bugui, who were the strongest among them, had never spoken to him like this. Later on, the most famous Chu Xiu had also never spoken to him like this. But right now, this martial artist's tone was almost like a reprimand. Chu Xiu acted as if he did not see that cultivator. Instead, he looked at the Ghostly Hand Monarch and asked, "Who is he?" The Ghost Hand King ignored that warrior and said coolly, "Abandoned disciple of the Ba Mountain Sword Sect, Green Lightning Sword, Chen Jiao. 3 months after you left the Heavenly Sin Division, Division Master brought him into the Heavenly Sin Division. Division Master thinks highly of him." The Ghost Hand King emphasized the word regard highly. Obviously, he was disdainful of Chen Jiao. When the other had first joined the Heavenly Sin Division, his attitude had been relatively humble. But later on, his arrogant and domineering side was revealed. In the past, in the Heavenly Sin Division, Tang Ye's personality had just been a bit strange, but he had not used his strength to bully others. Yen Bugui was even more so. He was usually too lazy to even speak. And Chu Xiu's personality was that if people respected him, he would respect them tenfold. The Ghostly Hand King did not take advantage of his seniority. The Fire Slave, the Wolf King, and the other assassins without nicknames were sufficiently respectful to him. Chu Xiu did not have the bad taste to put on airs as an expert. But this Chen Jiao was different. This person came from an old sect like the Ba Mountain Sword Sect. His concept of class was too strong. Usually, he would order around old people like the Ghostly Hand King who were in charge of the division's affairs. He had even less respect for the Fire Slave, the Wolf King, and other martial artists who were weaker than him. Of course, if this Chen Jiao was just arrogant and domineering, he would not have been able to survive in the Heavenly Sin Division. Naturally, someone would teach him a lesson. This Chen Jiao's greatest advantage was that he knew how to observe moderation, and he knew how to flatter the Heavenly Sin Division leader. In the past, the Heavenly Sin Division had never had someone like this. The Ghostly Hand King was just smooth. The Fire Slave and the Wolf King only listened to the division leader, but they would not actively flatter him. As to Tang Ye and Yen Bugui, there was no need to mention them. They probably did not even know what flattery was. The Heavenly Sin Division leader was also a person. He naturally liked to listen to flattery and flattery. In the past, Tang Ye and the others had strength. As long as they were obedient, he would not ask for so much. But now, this Chen Jiao came from the Ba Mountain Sword Sect. He had strength, and knew how to flatter. His position in the Heavenly Sin Division leader's heart was higher. On the other side, Chen Jiao heard the disdain in the Ghostly Hand King's tone, and the dismissive attitudes of Tang Ye and the others, and his expression darkened. This Chu Xiu in front of him was just a traitor of the Blue Dragon Society. But it seemed that in their eyes, his status was not even as high as Chu Xiu. Chen Zhao snorted coldly. He pulled out his flashing blue longsword and pointed it at Chu Xiu. He shouted, "All of you, shut up. What is the meaning of you chatting and laughing with this traitor?" The division leader spent half a year to find his tracks. Now that he has been released, can you bear the responsibility? From the moment he entered, Chen Jiao had maintained great enmity towards Chu Xiu. This was not because he was loyal to the Heavenly Sin Division leader, but out of jealousy. While Chu Xiu had defected after he joined the Blue Dragon Society, the other assassins in the Blue Dragon Society would still talk about how famous Chu Xiu had been in the Blue Dragon Society in the past, and how powerful he had been. He did not have a temper, unlike Chen Jiao and the others who would often compare him to Chu Xiu. After this happened many times, Chen Jiao naturally felt a wave of jealousy and dissatisfaction towards Chu Xiu, and even resentment. Especially today, when he entered the door, the ghostly Hand King and the others showed a sense of alienation, as though Chu Xiu was their comrade, and he was the outsider. Of course, this was the reality. In the past, Chu Xiu's performance in the Blue Dragon Society was obvious to all. Everyone present had carried out missions with him. In the battle of the Yao clan, he had killed Yao Nanxian and the others in front of all the experts of the various sects and destroyed the Yao clan. From then on, the Blue Dragon Society's Heavenly Sin Division had returned to the eyes of the pugilistic world of East Swallow. These were all genuine achievements. Chen Jiao, an outsider who had just joined, was so arrogant. What right did he have? Just because he knew how to flatter? This was indeed disdain. This was the disdain that the seniors of the Blue Dragon Society had for a newcomer like Chen Jiao. With Chen Jiao pointing his sword at him, Chu Xiu suddenly sneered. In the next moment, he actually directly attacked. He formed the army formula with his hand, and the great Vajra seal came crashing down. Unparalleled Vajra, world-subduing demons. The moment Chu Xiu made his move, the Ghost Hand King and the others tacitly took a step back. No one paid attention to Chen Jiao. Instead, they watched curiously as Chu Xiu made his move. They had worked with Chu Xiu before, so they had some understanding of Chu Xiu's strength. In the end, the seal technique that Chu Xiu displayed was something that none of them had ever seen before. Furthermore, its might was astonishingly great. Other than Yan Bugui, who was similarly incomparably violent, there was no one else present who dared to receive this seal from Chu Xiu. At this time, Chen Jiao was the same. In a state of shock, he slashed out with the indigo sword in his hand. In an instant, the indigo sword light with lightning fell. In an instant, he had slashed out hundreds of times. Under Chu Xiu's great Vajra imprint, a layer of sword light net was formed. Chen Jiao also cultivated the purple lightning azure light sword of the Ba Mountain Sword sect, and his strength was not weak. After all, he came from one of the 7 sects and 8 schools. Even if his disciples' strength was weak, it would not be that weak. Moreover, if Chen Jiao was really useless, the Heavenly Sin Division leader would not have accepted him into the Blue Dragon Society. After all, although the Heavenly Sin Division leader was a little narrow-minded, his requirements were very strict. Those who could be accepted into the division by the Heavenly Sin Division leader were all outstanding people. But now, Chen Jiao encountered Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu had just come out of seclusion, and his strength had greatly improved. Golden Gang Qi blossomed on the seal, giving Chu Xiu, who was dressed in black, a feeling of holiness. He was like a real Buddhist Vajra that could subdue demons. A violent explosion rang out. Chu Xiu's incomparably ferocious great Vajra seal had directly shattered Chen Jiao's lightning net sword light. A great force assaulted him, causing Chen Jiao to almost lose his grip on the long sword in his hand. He took a few steps back, each step causing deep cracks to appear on the ground beneath his feet. Only then did he barely manage to dispel the force. However, a strand of blood flowed from his mouth. Chen Jiao looked at Chu Xiu, his eyes flashing with shock. In the Heavenly Sin Division, he would often hear all kinds of rumors about Chu Xiu. At that time, Chen Jiao was naturally unconvinced. No matter how strong the other was, he was only an inner invulnerability cultivator. But now that they were fighting, not only was the outer invulnerability cultivator, but his strength was even more terrifying than those warriors who had been in the outer invulnerability realm for many years. He could not even take one blow from him. Not only Chen Jiao, but even Tang Ye and the others were looking at Chu Xiu in shock. Clearly, they did not expect that the current Chu Xiu had already reached such a level of strength. The Ghost Hand King exclaimed, "Is this the power you obtained after stealing the blood jade crystal and refining it?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I already said that I never thought of snatching the blood jadestone. I know my own capabilities. If the Heavenly Sin Branch Master's plan was normal, I would not have had the chance to snatch the blood jadestone. It's a pity that the plan to snatch the blood jade exquisite jade was originally a trap. Didn't you guys notice that something was wrong?" As he spoke, Chu Xiu told the truth of the matter. Looking at the few people present, Chu Xiu said calmly, "We are all working together, and I did not want to fall out with you guys. But the Heavenly Sin Division leader, for his own selfish desires, wanted me to attract the firepower and use me as a shield. Of course, I did not want to die, so I could only betray the Blue Dragon Society. Everyone, if this happened to you, how would you choose?" As soon as he said this, everyone present had different expressions. They were all silent, especially Tang Ye. His face was expressionless, and he only looked deeply at Chu Xiu. Tang Ye was a smart person. Because the Heavenly Sin Division leader had been chosen between him and Chu Xiu, Tang Ye was more sensitive to this matter. He had secretly investigated some information and had more or less deduced the truth of the matter. Previously, when they were tracking Chu Xiu, he purposely revealed his aura and left a dart to warn Chu Xiu. After all, if not for Chu Xiu, he would have been the one being abandoned. Chapter 139. The Ghost Hand Monarch and the others were disappointed by the Heavenly Sin Branch leader's actions. In fact, they already had some guesses about this matter. However, the Ghost Hand Monarch and the others were not as bold as Tang Ye, who actually dared to investigate in secret. They only had some vague guesses in their hearts. After all, when Chu Xiu betrayed them, the Heavenly Sin Branch leader could have reported Chu Xiu to the Blue Dragon Society headquarters and let all the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society pay attention to Chu Xiu. In the end, the Heavenly Sin Branch leader did not do so. If he did not have a guilty conscience, then what else could it be? In the past, the Heavenly Sin Branch leader's actions were a bit extreme and his desire to control his subordinates was understandable. However, to toss Chu Xiu out like a sacrificial pawn for the sake of his own selfish desires would inevitably cause them to feel disdain, and they would feel sympathy for the death of a rabbit. However, before they could say anything, a cold voice rang out. "Nonsense." In an instant, the surrounding atmosphere became extremely oppressive. It was as if the air had become a bit more viscous. The Heavenly Sin Branch leader walked in and said coldly, "At this time, you still want to bewitch people and play with your shallow methods?" Seeing the Heavenly Sin Branch leader come in, the Ghost Hand Monarch and the others felt a chill in their hearts and immediately stood to the side. Regardless of whether they felt that the Heavenly Sin Branch leader was dead or not, since the Heavenly Sin Branch leader was here, even if they sympathized with Chu Xiu, there was nothing they could do. In the entire Heavenly Sin Branch, no one dared to go against the Heavenly Sin Branch leader, because that was simply asking for death. In the Heavenly Sin Branch, only those who were obedient could live. Chen Zhao, who had been injured by Chu Xiu and did not dare to say anything, immediately became spirited. He immediately echoed, "Chu Xiu, you betrayed the Blue Dragon Society and the Lord Division leader. No matter what you say, it is useless." Chu Xiu didn't care about this clown. He just said indifferently, "Whether or not I'm bewitching people, you should know." The Heavenly Sin Branch leader stretched out a hand and said coldly, "In the past, when you were being chased by the various martial arts factions of the Linzhong Commandery, if it wasn't for me, you would already be a pile of bones. But you actually dared to betray me today. Very well, I will personally take your life." The Sky Sin Branch leader was a very controlling person, and he was also a very stubborn person. In the past, when he was an assassin in a low-level branch of the Blue Dragon Society, his mission completion rate was 100%. The other assassins of the Blue Dragon Society couldn't complete the mission. They either died or were heavily injured and gave up on the mission. Their records were stained with an incomplete mission. But the Sky Sin Branch leader was different. If he discovered that he couldn't kill his target, he would not give up. Instead, he would bitterly cultivate and not accept any missions. He would stubbornly cultivate until he could kill his target and complete the mission. The longest time the Sky Sin Branch leader had completed a mission was 3 years. Even when the client died in an accident, he still managed to kill his target and complete the mission. This kind of thing was not worth it to other assassins, but the Sky Sin Branch leader insisted on doing it. Now that he was chasing after Chu Xiu, no matter if it was the hot-tempered Bai Qinhu or the more tactful Meng Yuanlong, they would rationally consider this matter. When the price of chasing after Chu Xiu would be detrimental to their interests, they would give up. And even if the Sky Sin Branch leader knew that killing Chu Xiu wouldn't bring him any benefits, and that it would even be a waste of effort, he still didn't hesitate to use manpower and resources to hide in southern Mang Mountain. This was all to kill Chu Xiu. This was no longer just venting his anger, this was the Sky Sin Branch leader's obsession. The power of heaven and earth around Chu Xiu began to rapidly contract. Boundless stellar energy came pressing down, wanting to wrap around Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu had seen this strange martial skill before. The first time he saw it, the Sky Sin Branch leader had used it to crush a martial artist into minced meat and blood. Chu Xiu's eyes shone brightly. Stellar energy erupted from his entire body, pushing his strength to the limit. During the day, he had already prepared everything. The person he was waiting for should be arriving soon. Of course, if something happened to the other party, Chu Xiu could only put his life on the line and see if he could escape from the hands of a one with the world realm expert. The moment the Sky Sin Branch leader made his move, Chu Xiu's hands formed a seal. The aura around him suddenly underwent a strange change, becoming incomparably stable. Confrontation Formula, Dugu Seal. The Dugu Seal was stable. He erupted with his strongest true energy, interweaving it in his body. It was like an immovable mountain, like an iron wall. Immovable like a mountain, impregnable like a fortress, impervious to fire and water. The confrontation formula focused on defense. At this moment, the Sky Sin Branch leader felt as if he was pinching a rock. Stellar energy exploded and Chu Xiu's figure retreated step by step. The protective stellar energy around him and the confrontation formula only lasted for a moment before they were extinguished. But in that instant, he had still blocked the attack. This caused the Sky Sin Branch leader to be stunned. What a strange seal technique. Its defensive power is actually so shocking that it can actually block my divine black spatial claw. Did you obtain this by chance? I'm very interested in it. Hand it over. The confrontation formula of the fast and slow 9 words formulas could barely block the Sky Sin Branch leader's attack. Chu Xiu panted and said lightly, "If I hand over my martial arts to you, will you let me go?" The Sky Sin Branch leader was wearing a mask. But at this moment, Chu Xiu could feel a sense of mockery in his emotions. "Of course not. But I can leave your corpse intact. I'll let you die a little faster and more pleasing. After all, you've seen my divine black spatial claw. Those who die in my hands will not look good." Chu Xiu did not answer. His right hand was already holding the red sleeve blade. The power of the 3 blades of Avicii burst out. A pitch-black mist lingered on the blade, looking abnormally evil and terrifying. The person he was waiting for had not appeared yet. Chu Xiu could only try his best to fight. To be precise, it was not a fight, but an escape. At this moment, one of the walls of the tavern was directly smashed by someone. An incomparably sharp blade aura that exuded a shocking murderous aura came crashing down. The thick scarlet murderous aura even lit up the entire night sky. The Sky Sin branch leader's expression suddenly changed. He stretched out the divine black spatial claw in his hand. His Gang Chi collided with the murderous aura of the blade aura in midair. Suddenly, a terrifying wave burst out, instantly tearing the entire tavern apart. Little loaches of the Blue Dragon Society, you've crossed the line. A northern yen is not enough for you. Now, you want to cross Wei County and play around in my eastern Qi land? As the voice fell, several martial artists walked in from outside the destroyed tavern. The leader was a bald giant in his 40s. He was also at the realm of one with the world. He wore a silver-white tiger armor, but he had a scarlet cloak draped over his shoulders. In his hand was a huge long blade that was nearly as tall as a person. It looked incomparably ferocious. The front was a scarlet blade, and the back of the blade was filled with ferocious sawtooth wolf fangs. The moment he saw this person, the Sky Sin branch leader's expression suddenly changed. He said coldly, "People of the White Tiger Hall. What is the meaning of this? This is still Wei County, not your eastern Qi land. The ones who have crossed the line and violated the rules are you." The bald giant of the White Tiger Hall sneered. "Wei County used to belong to my eastern Qi land. If I say you've crossed the line, then you've crossed the line." The moment these people from the White Tiger Hall appeared, their aura was extremely domineering. The bald giant looked around and said, "Which one of you is from the Dragon Rider Imperial Army? Otherwise, it would be hard to explain to the higher-ups if we accidentally hurt you." The Sky Sin branch leader and the others were stunned. Dragon Rider Imperial Army? Why was there a Dragon Rider Imperial Army involved in this? Chu Xiu stepped forward and cupped his hands towards the bald giant. "This one is Lin Yi, a captain of the 76th and 6th Battalion of the Dragon Rider Imperial Army. Greetings, seniors of the White Tiger Hall. This one was sent by the second prince to infiltrate the northern Yen land to collect treasures and intelligence on the northern Yen land. However, my identity was exposed during the treasure hunt and I was hunted down by the Blue Dragon Society. That's why I came to seek help from the seniors of the White Tiger Hall." As he spoke, Chu Xiu took out the medallion he had plundered from the corpses of the 3 Dragon Rider Imperial Army soldiers and showed it to the bald giant of the White Tiger Hall. During the day, after Tangya had hinted to Chu Xiu that the Azure Dragon Society was coming to kill him, Chu Xiu actually already had a way to break out of this predicament. That way lay in the hands of this bald, brawny man in front of him. A branch of the White Tiger Hall, one of the 4 spirits, was located not far from the border between Wei County and Eastern Qi. The White Tiger Hall and the Blue Dragon Society were both part of the 4 spirits, but the relationship between the two was like fire and water. Whenever they encountered each other, a great battle was inevitable. Originally, with Chu Xiu's status, it would have taken some effort to lure the White Tiger Hall over. However, Chu Xiu knew a secret that not many people in the Jianghu knew. The White Tiger Hall had already sided with the Eastern Qi Imperial Court, or rather, it was more appropriate to say that the two sides had joined forces. In the past, the Northern Yen had joined forces with the Northern Yen Jianghu to counterattack Eastern Qi and rise again. Eastern Qi had suffered a great loss. After their ally, the Wei Kingdom, was destroyed, they wanted to make use of the forces in the Jianghu. Unfortunately, Eastern Qi was different from the Northern Yen. As the largest and most prosperous Eastern Qi of the 3 countries, nearly half of the martial arts forces in the world were concentrated in Eastern Qi. It would not be easy for the Eastern Qi imperial court to borrow the power of the other sects in the Jianghu without paying a price. Only the White Tiger Hall, which was both good and evil, had too many grudges with the martial arts world of Eastern Qi, which had damaged its foundation. It had to find an ally, so it chose to join forces with the Eastern Qi imperial court. However, this news had not yet spread to the Jianghu, so other than the people of the Eastern Qi imperial court and the White Tiger Hall, no one else knew about it. A defected killer who was being hunted by the Blue Dragon Society might not be able to get the help of the White Tiger Hall, but what about the Dragon Riders' imperial army that belonged to the Eastern Qi imperial court? During the day, Chu Xiu secretly found a few low-level Jianghu people, drew the symbol of the Dragon Riders' imperial army, and gave it to them. He had them send it to the White Tiger Hall and ask for help as a member of the Dragon Riders' imperial army. Because of their cultivation methods, the martial artists of the White Tiger Hall were somewhat violent and bloodthirsty, but this did not mean that they were idiots. The White Tiger Hall had just joined Eastern Qi. Although it couldn't be said that they were currying favor, they would at least take the initiative to maintain good relations with some of Eastern Qi's military organizations. Thus, the token that Chu Xiu had taken from the corpses of the 3 Dragon Rider Imperial Army soldiers was going to be of great use this time. Chapter 140. Chu Xiu's act of pretending to be a member of the Dragon Rider Imperial Guard was not a risky move. Rather, he was confident that he would not be seen through by the people of White Tiger Hall. There was no name on the Dragon Rider Imperial Guard's waist tag, only the military organization they belonged to. Let alone a newly joined organization like White Tiger Hall, not even the other members of the Dragon Rider Imperial Guard would be able to recognize Chu Xiu. The reason was simple. The Dragon Rider Imperial Guard belonged to the imperial family of Eastern Qi, but they did not only listen to the orders of a single prince, but also all members of the imperial family. In this sort of environment, apart from working alone, the Dragon Rider Imperial Guard would mostly carry out missions in groups of 5. As such, unless they were in the same group, even if everyone was from the same camp, they might not be able to recognize each other. In fact, if this person from White Tiger Hall told Eastern Qi's second prince about Chu Xiu, as long as Eastern Qi's second prince did not send people to investigate the Dragon Rider Imperial Guard's roster, the second prince might not be able to see anything wrong. He had so many Dragon Rider Imperial Guard subordinates scouring the world to collect treasures and other things for him, so how could he remember everyone's names? The Heavenly Sin Division leader and the others all looked at Chu Xiu in shock. At this moment, even the Heavenly Sin Division leader could not figure out Chu Xiu's background. Could he really be a member of the Dragon Rider Imperial Guard? It was no secret that Chu Xiu was born in Wei Prefecture, and Wei Prefecture had previously belonged to Eastern Qi. As such, it was possible that Chu Xiu had secretly joined the Dragon Rider Imperial Guard. However, after thinking about it carefully, it did not seem right. If Chu Xiu really was a member of the Dragon Rider Imperial Guard, why had he been chased so miserably back in Linzhong Prefecture? In fact, when the Heavenly Sin Division leader took action, Chu Xiu had almost been surrounded and killed. However, Heavenly Sin Division leader didn't have much time to think about it. The White Tiger Hall martial artist looked at the token on Chu Xiu's body. After confirming that there was no mistake, he grinned at Heavenly Sin Division leader and said, "Blue Dragon Society's little loaches, it's been a while since I've fought. Today, I'll use you to start off with." The White Tiger Hall's cultivator wasn't spouting malicious words. He was speaking the truth. The White Tiger Hall's cultivation method focused on sharpness and slaughter. Everything had to be cultivated through slaughter. However, the White Tiger Hall had offended most of the martial arts sects in Eastern Qi due to their excessive killings. Therefore, they had been keeping a low profile for a long time. Now that they had encountered Heavenly Sin Branch leader, they could finally go on a killing spree. The headquarters had instructed them not to cause any trouble and not to casually provoke other sects, but they didn't say that they couldn't look for their old enemy, the Blue Dragon Society. With a loud bang, a scarlet aura filled with killing intent erupted. As the White Tiger Hall brawny man slashed out with his saber, killing intent soared into the sky. White Tiger Malevolent God Shield. The White Tiger Hall's White Tiger Malevolent God Shield was very similar to Chu Xiu's blood-refined God Shield. However, the martial intent contained within was different. Chu Xiu's blood-refined God Shield was unsheathed and condensed a powerful blood aura. Its might was astonishing, and the powerful blood aura could suppress any strange power. If it seeped into the opponent's body, it could even corrode the opponent's blood and energy. It was incomparably evil. However, the White Tiger Hall's White Tiger Malevolent God Shield was much simpler and more direct. The White Tiger of the West belonged to Eugene, and it specialized in slaughter. The White Tiger Malevolent God Shield condensed killing intent and boundless sharpness to the extreme. It could be said to be extremely ferocious. The White Tiger Hall's White Tiger Malevolent God Shield was an existence of the same realm as Heavenly Sin Branch Leader. However, his cultivation was clearly more profound than Heavenly Sin Branch Leader's. That violent aura immediately suppressed Heavenly Sin Branch Leader. The other martial artists of the White Tiger Hall also rushed forward and started fighting with Tang Ye and the others. Chu Xiu's eyes narrowed as he said in a loud voice, "Senior of the White Tiger Hall, I still have to return to Eastern Qi to hand over the treasure to the second prince. I'll have to rely on Senior to defend here." The White Tiger Hall's brawny man casually said as he fought, "Let's go. Leave these little loaches of the Blue Dragon Society to me." Chu Xiu glanced at the battle situation. The White Tiger Hall had actually brought fewer people. Chen Jiao, who had been severely injured by Chu Xiu, was actually hiding to the side and hadn't made a move. When he saw Chu Xiu's gaze, he immediately took a step back, his eyes filled with fear. Just now, when Chu Xiu used the Great Vajrawill seal, he already knew the gap between him and Chu Xiu. It was absolutely a world of difference. If he recklessly tried to stop Chu Xiu, he would be courting death. Chu Xiu smiled at Chen Jiao, but he didn't continue to attack. Instead, he turned around and left. He was just a small character who was used to changing the direction of the wind. Killing him at a time like this would be a waste of time. After leaving, Chu Xiu exploded with all his strength. However, he didn't go to Eastern Qi. Instead, he followed the border of Eastern Qi and prepared to head to Guanzhong. Previously, Chu Xiu had indeed planned to go to Eastern Qi. However, now that this had happened, although Chu Xiu was confident that his impersonation of a dragon rider Imperial Guard wouldn't be exposed, it was best for him not to go to Eastern Qi just in case. Among the three great countries in the world, Eastern Qi was the one with the deepest waters. Because of its vast territory, nearly half of the major sects in Jianghu were in the Eastern Qi realm. With Chu Xiu's current strength, if he dared to continue causing trouble in Eastern Qi, his fate would probably be much worse than when he was in Northern Yan. During the day, not only did Chu Xiu inform the people of the White Tiger Hall to come, but he was also thinking about his next step. Right now, Chu Xiu had offended too many people. He seemed to need a backer or a place that could cleanse his identity. The so-called good and evil were just nonsense. The monks of the Great Light Temple always said that one could become a Buddha after putting down the butcher's knife. The Great Light Temple also took in many evil villains who were willing to convert to Buddhism. Now, Chu Xiu only had the nickname of Blood Demon. This was referring to his methods, but it didn't mean that he had truly fallen into the evil path. As long as he could find a suitable backer, temporarily cleansing his identity would not be a problem. Originally, the Blue Dragon Society could be Chu Xiu's backer. However, later on, Chu Xiu realized that even without the incident with the Heavenly Sin Branch Leader, the Blue Dragon Society's style of doing things was too extreme. An assassin's organization was just an assassin's organization. Unless Chu Xiu sat in the position of the Heavenly Sin Branch Leader, he would only be a so-called gold medal assassin without much power. If Chu Xiu was given time, Chu Xiu was confident that he could sit in the position of branch leader. However, it would take too long. Moreover, the Blue Dragon Society's reputation was not good. Chu Xiu directly set his sights on other places. The Guanzhong area was the choice that Chu Xiu made after careful consideration. The Guanzhong area was located in the center of the border between the three countries. Because it was the border of the three countries, even though it was not small, it was a chaotic area that was not governed by the three countries. It was constantly invaded by war. Later on, when the three countries stopped fighting, the Guanzhong area became a convenient place for the three countries to trade with each other. Of course, it was also a convenient place for smuggling. The things that were prohibited by the three countries were all transported through the Guanzhong area to the enemy countries. In the beginning, there was no order in the Guanzhong area. Later on, the Guanzhong area became more and more chaotic. Then, the local martial artists, as well as some extremely famous martial artists and rogue cultivators, joined forces to form the Guanzhong torture room to control the order in the Guanzhong area. The Guanzhong torture room's history was not long. It had only been 300 years. Moreover, the change of power was very fast. In these 300 years, there had been 8 hall leaders. It was not until 30 years ago that the Guanzhong torture room could be considered to have truly risen. 30 years ago, the Iron Judge Guan Siyu took over the position of hall leader of the Guanzhong torture room. Internally, she reorganized the order of the Guanzhong torture room. She was unyielding and impartial. Externally, Guan Siyu contacted the Northern Yan, Eastern Qi, and Western Chu. She made the three countries realize that they indeed needed a buffer zone, and the Guanzhong area was a good choice. Therefore, the three countries signed a treaty. From then on, the Guanzhong area was an absolutely neutral area. Any trade between the three countries must be carried out openly in the Guanzhong area. Any smuggling of prohibited items would be suppressed by the Guanzhong torture room. From then on, the Guanzhong torture room became a very special existence. It was in between the palace and the pugilistic world. Although the Guanzhong torture room was recognized by the three countries, it was not under the jurisdiction of any of them. Even the power of the three countries could not penetrate into the Guanzhong torture room. As an absolutely neutral existence, the Guanzhong torture room would not lean towards any side. Therefore, the Guanzhong torture room was not considered a military organization of the imperial court. However, although the Guanzhong torture room was born in the wilderness of the pugilistic world, its later role was to monitor the order of the Guanzhong area. The main target of monitoring was the martial arts forces in the Guanzhong area. Its role was somewhat similar to some military organizations of the imperial court. Therefore, even though the power of the Guanzhong torture room was much stronger than the Jianghu sects such as the Righteous Manor, the Guanzhong torture room was actually not included in the Jianghu songs. Apart from these characteristics, due to the chaotic order of the Guanzhong torture room in the past, incidents such as revenge killings and even the destruction of families often occurred. Therefore, the Guanzhong torture room trained a large number of Jianghu constables to be in charge of these matters. The Jianghu constables of the Guanzhong torture room were very famous in the pugilistic world. Among them, the most experienced constables could even analyze all the martial arts and fighting steps of the two parties just by looking at the corpses. It was almost like a replay. Therefore, when some sects or the imperial court needed to investigate something, they would even specially come to the Guanzhong area and invite a few Jianghu constables to help. Chu Xiu set his sights on the Guanzhong area. Naturally, he wanted to join the Guanzhong torture room. In terms of tolerance, there was probably no place in the pugilistic world that could compare to the Guanzhong torture room. The former hall master of the Guanzhong torture room, the Iron Judge Guan Siyu, had even said to the whole pugilistic world that the Guanzhong torture room only looked at ability and did not look at one's background. As long as one had the ability and could abide by the rules of the Guanzhong torture room, then one could join the Guanzhong torture room. It was also because of Guan Siyu's magnanimous way of doing things in the past that a large number of Jianghu people from the wilderness came to join. That was why the Guanzhong torture room rose so quickly. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.